Okay, we're going to get started. Thanks everyone for your attendance here at our board voting meeting. This is our March meeting. If you would please join me in standing for the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start off this evening with a couple presentations, but before we do that, I have asked our solicitor, Sean Lockinger, to join us this evening, and what we want to do is take this opportunity to recap the final outcome of the litigation between the Township and the school district as it pertains to the district's proposed construction of a transportation center on the Watton Creek Elementary campus. So in February, their oral arguments were heard in Berks County Court of Common Pleas in this appeal of the Exeter Township Zoning Hearing Board decision, in which they denied a special exception to the construction of a transportation facility on the 86-acre Watton Creek Elementary campus. The proposed facility was intended to serve for the storage and maintenance of vehicles required for the transportation of students. Also provide office and employee space that would replace our current aging transportation facility on Kerr Road. Judge Lillis in Berks Court of Common Pleas rendered his ruling several weeks following the court hearing in February. And the case and the subsequent ruling and rationale for the decision are really best understood by our legal counsel. So we've asked Mr. Lockinger to review the outcome and hopefully in layman's terms so we can understand, summarize the outcome so the board can better understand the implications of the district, the implications for the district and the township. So I'm going to turn it over at this time to Mr. Lockinger and just give you this opportunity to walk us through the outcome of that hearing.
All right. I will try to simplify this as much as possible. And frankly, I think it is, at the end of the day, it's pretty easy to understand what happened here. Essentially, when the matter came up before the Berks County Court of Common Pleas, and I'll go into some background in just a minute here, but when it got to the court, there were really two legal issues before the court. One was called a declaratory judgment, which is essentially asking the court to make a pronouncement on the law. There technically doesn't have to be a dispute for a court to render a declaratory judgment decision. And essentially what was asked of the court was, does the school code preempt the local zoning ordinance? Because obviously if the school code preempted the local zoning ordinance, to the extent that there was any conflict, the school code would rule. The second thing that was asked of the court was essentially an appeal of the zoning hearing board's decision that the district would not be granted a special exception to the zoning ordinance, which essentially the zoning hearing board said you're not allowed to build a bus barn there because it doesn't fit within the special exception, the accessory use exception to the zoning ordinance. At the end of the day, the court rendered two decisions, but they really were both the same. And that was that the district lost, but I guess what I want to tell you is that the district lost on very narrow grounds because the court really didn't look at it except in a very narrow way. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me give you some background first, because essentially the area is zoned R for rural, and there's only certain exceptions in the zoning ordinance. There's only certain uses in the zoning ordinance that is allowed in a rural area. One of those is a use for a school. That's why the school is there. Other than that, if it's not specifically a school or one of the listed reasons or one of the listed uses in the ordinance, it has to be a special exception. Here, the special exception was an accessory use, means the use is secondary to the primary use of the property. So in a sense, the way this was originally presented to the township and then to the zoning hearing board is that the bus barn was a secondary use to that school building there that already exists on the property. The zoning hearing board said, no, it's not an accessory use to that, it's actually another primary use. It's really stands in the same stead as the school itself. That's really what went up to the court. The court agreed with that reasoning. The court said, and frankly, if you read the ordinance, you can see where the court is coming from. If you stick within the four walls of the ordinance and you look at the definition of accessory use, you can see where the court would say, yeah, that makes sense to me. And remember, this is very important from a legal standpoint, when the court reviews that decision from the zoning hearing board, what they're really reviewing is, did they make a mistake? That's really all they're reviewing. They're not looking at this with fresh eyes. They're not looking at it as a brand new question before them. What they're looking at it as is, did the zoning hearing board make a mistake? And the court said in this case, no, they did not make a mistake. And so the strict appeal from the zoning hearing board decision was denied by the court on the grounds, specifically, it's not an accessory use. Therefore, the zoning hearing board didn't make a mistake, therefore your appeal is denied. Now, there were some technical legal grounds, but that was the bottom line for the final decision. The second decision was about the preemption. Did school law preempt the local ordinance? The court never looked at it. The court, they heard arguments about it, but legally they ignored it. What they said was, under the law, if there is an administrative body, in this case the zoning hearing board, or frankly starting at the township level and into the zoning hearing board, if there is an administrative body that can make this decision before us, they have to have their shot at that argument first before we get it in hand. Does that make sense to you? It's called exhaustion of administrative remedies. And essentially that concept of the law is put in because it's trying to take, local courts of common pleas have so many cases that what they're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of some of those cases before they even get to us. So you have to go to the administrative body first, exhaust those remedies. Once you exhaust those remedies, then you can go to court. What the court said was, this preemption argument was never brought up before the local body. Therefore, because it was never brought up before the local body, we as a court, under the doctrine of exhaustion of administrative remedies, cannot look at this as a legal argument. So although they heard the arguments, although they were briefed on them, I'm sure they read that, when the ruling came down, the judge said, I'm going to ignore it for legal purposes. The other thing that he ignored for legal purposes is any other argument that was raised outside of that accessory use argument. For example, there was an argument made that this is really a school use, that really this is a school in many aspects. It's part of the school that's being put on the grounds there. But again, the court said, I'm not even going to listen to this argument because it wasn't raised before the administrative body. Therefore, we're under no obligation to look at this. I'll be honest with you, courts of common pleas are kind of famous for doing this because it's easy for them to, it's an easy decision for them. They don't have to dig too deeply into it. If there's an easy way out with a local court of common pleas, I know I'm sounding cynical here, but the fact is they'll usually try to find that way. And in this case, it was very easy for them to say, since this was never brought up, we're not even going to consider it. So, at the end of the day, the district lost, but it was on this very narrow ground of it's not properly classified as an accessory use. It doesn't fit under that specific exception of the local ordinance. Technically speaking, the legal argument for preemption, the legal argument for a school use are still viable legal arguments at this point in time. Now, to raise those arguments, you would literally have to go back and start the process over again. But the court, there's nothing that has barred those arguments from being made, and we don't know how the court would rule on those because they didn't. So those arguments technically are still alive right now. So moving forward, it seems from a legal perspective, your choices are, originally you could have appealed the decision. I was told that time period has run at this point. Your appeal period is over. And frankly, I'm not sure it would have been a good, I think it might have been a waste of resources anyway. To the way the court wrote the decision, I'm not sure that it would have really made sense to appeal it. Obviously, another option is for the board to just drop it. And finally, the last option is, frankly, if you want to still make the arguments, they are legally viable, they still can be made, but you would have to start the process over again. You would have to have the opportunity to present those to the township, to the zoning hearing board. That's it in a very quick nutshell. I'm glad to answer any questions you have. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. Technically you lost, but it's on such a narrow ground that it's probably not as wide sweeping as it may first appear. But that's where the court left it at this point in time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lockyer? I think you must have. Okay, well, thank you. I just want to say that on the agenda this evening, there is a recommendation for the creation of an ad hoc committee whose charge will be to provide the board with some recommendations in terms of the resolution of some of our transportation concerns that we have. I mean, obviously, a very aging facility, and many questions about how we would proceed. And the proposal is to establish a committee, allow that committee to wrestle with some of the options that are available to us, and come back to the board at some point in time with some recommendations and suggestions for moving forward. We'll move on to the next section of our agenda, which is a presentation. It's entitled Stop the Bleed, and it's Mrs. Audrey Dickman, our athletic trainer. Thank you for coming here this evening.
And I'd just like to start out with this concept was first brought in front of the superintendents about 2 months ago, and it's a concept brought forward by Penn State Health St. Joseph. This will be at no cost to the district, but it's a vital piece of health care, if you will, that will be in our buildings that can literally save a life. I don't want to say too much about it, but I just want to give the small story that I gave to the superintendents and my support for this process. We had an incident at Wanton Creek earlier this year where an outside contractor was working on one of our pieces of machinery and cut his artery. And just, Mr. Przui can say he was in the building. Thankfully, no students were around because there was blood everywhere. And thankfully, somebody in the building was trained in this process and literally saved the person's life. So this is a great process that we certainly support and wanted to bring it in front of the board.
So if I can just talk before Audrey and Chris speak. The program was really a partnership, and it was Audrey's idea. She and I had talked about it several years ago. The trainers in school districts around Berks County are highly trained medical professionals who are caring for all types of illness and injury, not just in the athletes, but also within their schools in which they operate. So Audrey had approached Penn State Health St. Joe's about doing this program and doing it big, and having the Berks County Athletic Trainers, Scholastic Trainers Association actually take the lead within the school districts throughout the community. So I just I'm going to turn it over to you guys, but I want to congratulate Audrey for her vision in wanting to get this program started. Because of that, these devices that you see here, the boxes, will be distributed to all 110 school buildings in Berks County over the next 3 years. So Audrey, I'll turn the program over to you, and Chris Chamberlain, who is soon to be one of the top emergency planners in the state of Pennsylvania. He's leaving Penn State Health St. Joe's to take a position with the state doing emergency preparedness across a large swath of Pennsylvania. So congratulations to Chris and Audrey.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Jupina, for that lead, and I really appreciate that. Just like to say thank you for having us here. I'm personally really excited about this program rolling out. Mr. Jupina and I have been working on this for approximately 3 years, I believe. It all began from a result of a variety of stimulus. One being a threat here at our very own school while I was working, another one being an article I read about athletic trainers who had received what we phrased dynamic threat training, which is better than saying active shooter training, because it's not just shooters that we're faced with. There might be bombings, there might be car accidents. The world has gone a little bit off its edge, it seems, and it seems to be a statistical inevitability that we're going to be faced with this at this point. So it seemed good to just get prepared instead of say after a fact, I didn't think it could happen here. We're pretty sure it could, so let's plan for it. And to that vein, when I had first met Chris Chamberlain, he was in a different position, and he was our EMS coordinator. We started talking about how to best prepare the county's athletic trainers to be ready in case something of this magnitude occurred. It's not something we were trained for in school. We can deal with your fractured spine, but we don't know how to deal with a penetrating bullet wound or anything like that. So Chris helped us, as did Mr. Jupina in his role at St. Joe's, to get together with a group called TACMed and have the county's athletic trainers all got trained in this dynamic threat for free, which was pretty amazing. So thank you, Mr. Jupina, for that. It was at that point, I believe, Diane and I went to the Governor's Occupational Safety and Health Council conference as a result of being on the safety committee here at Exeter, where I heard a man from the Department of Homeland Security discuss the eventual rollout of something called Stop the Bleed, which really caught my eye. We were just planning this class. The athletic trainers got trained in dynamic threat. In doing so, I believe our nurses caught the bug of, hey, what's that? What's going on? Mr. Jupina found out what was going on, and to that end, Dr. Miller got our nurses trained from the very same organization that trained us in hemorrhage control and dynamic threat. So I think right now, as it stands, Exeter is probably the most trained district in hemorrhage and awful things and how to handle them than any district in the county, which I'm proud of. It's a strange thing to be proud of, I know, but in the way the world is, I am really proud. In those 2 years since we got trained, Mr. Jupina has been thinking about what his role could be and brilliantly came up with his piece of the puzzle being providing these boxes through St. Joe's Penn State Health, which was amazing. I had lamented our little group of county scholastic athletic trainers has zero funding and zero training and zero time to roll it out on our own, but together, amazingly, we came up with this partnership. So thank you very much for helping this come to fruition. It was in here, but you made it into a box that's going in every school in the county, and I think that's pretty amazing for everyone. And we should all be really proud of the Exeter-centric origin of this program, because it all started right here, and I think that's really awesome and should be celebrated. So that in and of itself is exciting to present to you, but I also wanted to have Chris Chamberlain here to kind of give you an idea of what the program is, how we intend to implement it, what the role of Penn State Health will be in providing these boxes, and what the role of your very own athletic trainers will be in providing ongoing training to basically anyone in the community. Our thoughts are to make a safer campus, community, and county. The more people who are trained in hemorrhage control, the better off we all are. If you're not trained in it, the person next to you might be when you're changing a copier, something or other, and you slice your artery. You never know when it's going to happen. It's kind of akin to CPR and AED over the last 25 years. So I'd like to introduce Chris Chamberlain, who is currently Emergency Services Outreach Coordinator at Penn State Health St. Joe's. It will eventually be something much even better. So please.
Don't call me late for dinner. Thank you, Audrey, and thanks again, Mike, for having us here tonight. Again, Chris Chamberlain, for a week or so more, the Emergency Services Outreach Coordinator for Penn State Health St. Joe's. So I wanted to, Audrey did a great job explaining a little bit of how the program came about and why we're doing it here and why we're here tonight. I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk a little bit about the history of the Stop the Bleed program, and then briefly just a little bit about what it actually entails in a short little demonstration. So Stop the Bleed is actually a nationwide initiative that actually is put on by the Department of Defense, and it really came out of some of the after-action reporting and some of the critiques that occurred after some of these shootings in some of our recent history, most notably the Sandy Hook shooting in Connecticut several years ago. And what it really found, and they looked at other bleeding events prior to that as well, what they determined was that people can die from bleeding, uncontrolled bleeding, within a matter of minutes, sometimes less than 5 minutes. And you know, our emergency response systems, while they're very, very good, and we're fortunate to have a very good system here, they're not that quick. And so the study showed that people can be saved, their lives can be saved, if the application of simple techniques and simple devices can occur in that period of time from the injury to 5 minutes of time. So that's the genesis of it, is kind of like, well, how do we do this? And so interestingly enough, the Department of Defense currently has a lot of experience in treating people injured in bleeding events, and a lot of that experience comes from combat, having soldiers overseas. And the techniques that we teach in Stop the Bleed are very simple, but they're actually identical to what is taught to soldiers, everyday soldiers. Not the corpsmen, not the surgeons, but the everyday soldiers. So it translates over into the civilian world. Not everything in the military does, but this does translate over to the civilian world, and that's what the Stop the Bleed program is. It's basically the ABCs of bleeding control. The first is, in the event of an emergency, to alert, activate the 911 emergency response system. Get them on the way. They might not be here in 2 minutes, but they still need to come. The next is B for bleeding. Figure out where the victim's bleeding from. Find out whether it's from their abdomen, from their leg, their arm. And then the final C is to compress and control the bleeding. And that's by using direct pressure or one of these devices that I'm going to demonstrate real briefly. So the idea of the program is to get that out there as far as wide as possible. You can equate the Stop the Bleeding program much like we've seen over the last 10, 15, 20 years with CPR and AEDs. Teaching everybody in the community to do CPR. Not just about everyone, raise your hand. A lot of people have CPR training. You know, you walk in a room like this, and there's a good percentage of people who know how to use CPR, know how to use an AED. The Stop the Bleed program is the same idea. We want to make sure that there's enough people around that have both the knowledge and the equipment to stop bleeding. And that's where the program from Penn State Health St. Joe's comes in to provide a bleeding control kit. That's this box here that we're going to ask the school buildings, so one for each school building. We'll ask them to put that in a central location in their school, probably next to where their AED is, at least one of them, and make that equipment available. In each of the kits are 8 individual kits that have things like tourniquets, dressings, gloves, and other things that you need to have to do the Stop the Bleed. So it's the program that Penn State Health St. Joe's is putting on is a combination of training, but also a combination, also providing the equipment for each school building in Berks County, including the schools here in Exeter. So those individual kits. So I'm going to put my microphone down just for a second. I think you'll be able to hear me, hopefully. So just briefly, I just want to show you a little bit about what's involved. The kits are in the box. There's each of the boxes that are on the mall has a pouch that within each pouch is, it's like the stacking dolls here. Within each pouch is another kit, which is an individual bleeding kit that has the tourniquet, the gloves, the dressings, everything you need to do a bleeding control situation. Okay. Essentially, what's there. The kind of the hallmark of it is the tourniquet, and this is the device. Tourniquets used to be a no-go. They used to say years ago, you took first aid as a Boy Scout, like, well, only in extreme circumstances. Now for life-threatening bleeding, the tourniquet is the go-to device. And in this case, if you have an injury, a leg or an arm that has a wound, the training is just to apply that tourniquet on the limb, tighten it up as tight as you can, and that commercially made tourniquet device here will stop that bleeding. You just put it in place, you turn the windlass device here until the bleeding stops, and then you secure that in place. Okay. The other techniques that we teach in the program are to do packing of the wound, taking a gauze, and this is where it gets a little bit, some people are a little, I get it, but you're actually going to take the gauze and actually put it down inside the wound. Okay. Used to be just pushing over top was the case, but the bleeding is actually happening down inside. So part of the training program is to actually pack that wound. And then the final thing is using pressure to hold that in place until the first responders arrive. So it's they're simple techniques. Again, I think if you can equate it to the way we learned CPR over the years, it's the same idea. Simple techniques that we can apply and put them in place. So The program with Penn State Health St. Joe's and working with the trainers is to get as many people as possible in each building. We did a training for all the athletic trainers a week ago. So all the athletic trainers that participate with the Berks County School Athletic Trainers Association, including Audrey and her team, are actually trainers for this program. So they're actually allowed to train other staff in the building, instructors for the program. I don't use the trainer.
We're trainers. So
Instructors for the program. So again, it's designed to kind of multiply, so that we can kind of plant the seed in one building and then allow it to grow. And Penn State Health is committed to helping get at least 50 people in each building trained and providing the initial kit for the building.
And after that, that's when your athletic trainers take over, and any continuing faculty, staff, or administrative training is something that we can handle entirely in-house. If our nurses are up to it and wish to be a part of it, they're healthcare providers.
Yep.
Once I provide them with the training, they are also instructors, and that will enlarge our ability to do more trainings. The instructor to training or to attendee ratio is 1 to 8, right, Chris?
That's right.
So the more people we have as instructors, the stronger we are as a campus community that we can train more people in-house. And then once faculty is trained, my vision and idea, along with Mr. Dupina, is to throw it out to the public. It's a program that's accessible to the public. It's not just for healthcare providers. It's meant to be accessible. It's meant for any of you to be able to come up, learn these techniques, test out on them, skill out on them, and you get your certificate that you have a better idea of how to handle something awful if you're faced with it. And I think that's the road to resilience, really, for Exeter, for the county, and for the state, as many people as possible. So we're hoping that you would embrace that as well and allow us to not only kick it to our faculty as each building gets a box. We'll provide training for the first 50 and then throw it to us. We can provide training for anyone else who's interested. And then I hope you'll support the effort to just have random classes at 7 o'clock at night, like this time at the high school. We can have the public come in, and anyone in the community who wants to can be trained. My goal is to have one school in Berks County host a training every month. That way anyone who wants to can go to a training in a timely fashion and get trained as quick as humanly possible. And that's the road to resilience in my eyes. We can't do much to prevent, but we sure can do a lot to prepare. And that's what we were hoping to present to you tonight. So, that's all.
Take any questions you might have briefly, and then.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I've heard that these assault weapons, the bullets that are used for assault weapons, when they strike someone, they kind of explode out or something. Now, how does that fit in with this? Would we be able to stop the bleeding or not?
That's it. That is exactly the type of life-threatening bleeding that the Stop the Bleed program is designed to do. It can be from a variety. Obviously, firearm injuries and things are what we're all talking about currently, but it really could be any type of injury. But that specifically is what this is designed. This equipment would equip you to do that. Yes.
Yeah, if he receives a shot like that anywhere on his limb, if we can get a tourniquet up higher than that and clamp it off,
It's going to do the job.
all will be well.
I know that while I was in high school, our health classes taught CPR to students, and they could volunteer to get certified, but they had to take the program. Is there any way that the gym teachers or the health teachers could be instructed in this and either become instructors for the students or be able to show them during some type of gym class or health class?
There is, like I said, the program is a national program. They do have criteria. It's not terribly specific, but there are some criteria as to who could be. It's certainly worth looking at. I mean, again, the program is designed to get it out to as many people as possible, to empower as many people. So any way you can do that is probably in line with the program.
Could our administrators put a sticky note on that?
If the board so chooses, yes.
Okay, any other questions?
Is one per building enough?
Well, yes and no. If in the absence of any in the building, I say it's a place to get started. I think what we're looking to do is at least from the Penn State Health St. Joe's standpoint, is get this as a catalyst. At least get the equipment out as much as at least one in each building to start with, and then perhaps this would be something that schools might want to build on after the fact. I think you can imagine the scenarios in your head, and would one kid located in a building be enough? I don't know that always that's the case, but I think that we're really, again, in the absence of anything in the building, I think we're ahead by giving training at least one kid in there. I think it's, you know, I think we'll have to defer to the individual schools and how they want to build from there.
Not to mention the modular nature of the things inside, you don't have to keep both of these in the box, you can take one and travel with
Very,
it.
very
Put
true.
one in
There's a lot of ways to
quadrant
deploy
of the
it, so.
school. I know I don't need one downstairs, because I have a to-go bag from Dynamic Threat Training with about 5 tourniquets, a whole bunch of football belts, a whole bunch of gauze ready to pick and go. So, it also, we can look at the things inside here, and I'd completely be open to dealing with the vendor that Chris found to provide these at cost, you know, a decent price, and put together more boxes and more bags for wherever you'd like it to. So it's something to build on, which is highly exciting. It's never enough. Until there's one in every classroom, it won't be enough in my mind.
So what would be the cost of, say, a box like that?
I believe, and I'm gonna just trying to go by memory, I think it costs us about $500 to put this together. So one box on the wall would equip was about $500 to do that. I think that was our math.
And you'll keep them supplied as
Oh,
well?
we will. I mean, the kit that Penn State Health, St. Joe's provides, if you use any equipment out of that, you know, we're committed to restocking that for the duration of that kit. So, and the vendor, the information's in the box again. You know, was willing to, if schools wanted to do more purchasing, if they're willing to extend some of the costs that we were able to get for that. So. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And this is actually, can I leave this with you guys tonight? This is your
That's our
box.
box.
Is that okay?
That's
This is yours. So.
That's our box.
Okay.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you so much for having me.
We continue with our presentations this evening with a report from Mr. Jeffrey Freeze, our Watton Creek Elementary principal. Welcome, Mr. Freeze.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Chris and Audrey, I'll take that from you. I'll take it over to the school now.
Yeah, that's right. It's good. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Very, very well. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here today to report out on behalf of the Watton Creek Elementary School. I have, in all told, with holidays and snow days, been on the ground at Watton Creek for approximately 50 academic school days. So what you have in front of you or on your computers is our data dashboard, something that we set out to put together from the minute we put boots to the ground at Watton Creek to get a better understanding of what it looks like at Watton Creek. I think it's Edwards Deming who said something along the lines of, you know, if you're, you know, when it comes to data, you know, if you are, unless you know the data, then you're just another person with an opinion, right? So this is our foundation. This right here, this is not an end, by the way. This is a means. So this, we're going to take this as a school, and this data that's here, and what we know about Watton Creek, we're going to be working together as a team in order to develop a plan for school improvement. So this is just the start. This is not the finish. I know there's probably plenty of questions, but you'll see that the data that is presented here focuses on attendance, behavior, as well as academics. Because we know if a student isn't attending school regularly, they're not sitting in a seat, they're not ready to learn. We know that if a student is dealing with social emotional issues that are precluding them from being in the classroom, again, they're not learning. We're not taking care of them. So this isn't just looking at PSSA data or benchmark data. This is looking at attendance and behavior as well. So one of the things I do want to point out before we go through each of the pages is, as you see, the final page is sort of a legend that gives you the idea of where this data came from. Much of it did come out of our Skyward system, which is our student management system, as you well know. One of the other things I want to point out to you is on the front page, the weekly community blog. Some of the things that we are doing, our faculty, staff, students are doing. This is something that we send out on a weekly basis via Blackboard Connect. It is found on our website off of the Administrator tab, and you'll see anytime you want to check in with what's going on at Watton Creek. It goes out again every Friday with a quick shot of the things that are happening at Watton Creek. Okay. So just walking through some of this information. I don't, want to walk through every single chart, graph, But I do want to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like. Obviously, at the top of the center, you're talking student attendance data. ISS and OSS stands for in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension. Your demographic data is there as well. Your comparative data with the district as much as could be mined. Moving down, you find PSSA results. In comparison to state results, on average, each one of those areas, 15, 16, and 17 for both reading and math, in 3rd and 4th grade, we outperformed the state average. So that's in terms of proficient and advanced. So what we need to do, though, is we need to dive deeper, right? Not just proficient and advanced. The second page talks about by reporting category. So where are our students' strengths? Where are their needs? So for instance, if you look on that second page, grade 3 PSSA, reading proficient and advanced by reporting category, you can see informational text down at the bottom, literature text, writing and language. That really helps us drill down to where our students are strong and where our students' needs are. Moving on to the third page, once again, you see 4th grade data, and in terms of reading and mathematics. And then finally, or I should say on the next page, you see dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills. One of the most difficult things for us to do is determine student success at the early levels, right? We have curriculum-based assessments, DIBBLS, as you might have heard it, dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills, are predictive subtests of a student's success as a reader. So this gives us an idea when we sit down in data meetings of how our students are doing. We also took time to go through our cultural norms. What's important for me is, and for our school community, is to understand where we're starting from. When it comes to concepts such as high expectations, tangible support, traditions, protections of what's most important. Nobody wants to go to work every day and not want to be where they are. And this is a good indication to me as I move forward of how we're doing as a school community. The next step down is the Parent Partnership Survey. That again was administered in January as well, and you see the parent responses from there. Many of you know, Mrs. Pisha came to Pre-K Counts walk with us back in, I guess that was in January, it seems like, when we had Judy Schwenk, Representative Schwenk, in our building, and she toured our pre-kindergarten classrooms. As you know, we now have 2 pre-kindergarten classrooms, and to be honest with you, it is one of the reasons why I was so interested in becoming a part of the Oak Creek community. I believe very strongly in early childhood education, and the opportunities that those students are getting are phenomenal. The next page, and this is really the last page that has data, is the PVOS score. This is value added, right? So what the state does is they take the 3rd grade PSSA data, and that same cohort that matriculates to 4th grade the following year, they say, okay, did we grow these students a year's growth in a year's time? So what this tells us, red means we're not growing them a year's growth, growth in a year's time. Green means, yep, a year's growth. Light blue, dark blue, that indicates significantly more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. So you see in 15, red for our 4th grade reading, but you see by 2017, we're in light blue, meaning that we are moving our students more than a year's growth in a year's time when it comes to ELA, 3rd grade to 4th grade. Math, you also see that we have moved, as of last year, the comparative results to a year's growth in a year's time. So at this point in time, I open it up to any questions. I know, there can be plenty of questions on any singular topic here. And again, I want you to understand that from my perspective, this is not the end. What this is a tool to help us, to guide us, to head in the right direction as we begin to plan for next school year.
Hello, Mr. Freaks. Thanks for joining us this evening. First question I have is going to the first page, It looks like we have about over 9% of our students are chronically truant. Is that something that's fixable, or is it something that you think is more of a challenge we can get
Yeah.
overcome?
I think the first step is, I really want to know what it is at the district level, comparatively. What we are counting, as you see from the legend there, as chronically truant, is students with more than 3 unexcused absences. So for us, it's not just about the number, it's about drilling down and figuring out why. Why is that? There have been changes in the state law, changes in school and policy in regards to what constitutes an illegal absence. Right now, one of I think the biggest factors we have is that parents have to get an excuse to us within 3 days of their absence, of the student's absence. And I think parents, things happen, especially when you're dealing with elementary school kids, right? That note gets stuck in the bottom of the book bag and doesn't make its way out, or something along those lines. So I think it's incumbent upon us to start taking a look at, first of all, are parents aware of that policy? And if they are, then what are we doing to help facilitate this process? There's a lot of things out there that we've heard of, including districts sending out emails to parents. Your child was absent today, please respond to this email. And all the parent has to do is just type in what the excuse was, done. They don't have to worry about handwriting something and sending it in, or through a voice messaging system or something along those lines. So I think this is more indicative of a change in policy than it is in terms of, I don't think our attendance has suffered. In fact, at whatever it is, overall, 96% attendance, it's solid. That's a really solid comparatively.
Question, if you could just help me to understand the terminology. I'm looking right now at page 2 of the document, and actually, yes, page 2, and on the mathematics, it's the PSSA mathematics by performance level descriptor versus by reporting category. I'm just not sure what that means. If you can help me out on that.
Absolutely. So the performance level, you see proficient or advanced. That's what we're going for. That's the percent of students that were proficient or advanced on the math assessment for the 15, 16, and 17 school years. Okay? And then down below, then what you have is you have their performance broken out by the areas, or the reporting areas, that are actually tested on the PSSA. So, there's a multitude of questions on that assessment, and each of those assessment questions can be attributed to one of those reporting categories: numbers and operations, algebraic concepts, geometry, data, and probability.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One question I just had was, who are the respondents for the cultural norm survey?
That's a great question. It's all of our faculty and staff.
Okay.
Again, that would have been sent out electronically. We also gave people the opportunity to do it paper and pencil. People feel just more comfortable that way, feel they can be anonymous that way, rather than electronically.
Was that done as soon as you got there, or after some time?
It was done, I think December 20th was my first day of school. It was done in the first couple of weeks of January.
Is there anything in there that surprises you?
I don't think there is any specific area that does particularly surprise me. I think one of the areas that I am very much looking forward to continuing to build upon is there's some really, really good things happening in terms of best practice at Watton Creek, and making sure that we're sharing that. We have an internal newsletter making sure that, when you have a building of 525 and, 40-some professionals and a lot of wonderful support staff, is making sure that, those kindergarten teachers know the great things that are happening in a 4th grade teacher's classroom. They don't get to see each other that often, right? And being able to communicate that not only within the community, in the school community, but also to our families, faculty, and staff.
Okay, I have a question on the nibble slide.
Yes.
Those percentages, I was looking at the grade K.
Correct.
So what exactly do those percentages represent? Is that like
Good question.
proficiency? And then the other question is, I see a drop from 16, 17 to 17, 18.
Correct. So what that does tell you, it gives us, DIBELS has a series of subtests based on whatever grade or time of year that you are in that grade level. Students are benchmarked 3 times during a school year. And those subtests, letter naming fluency is one of those subtests, for instance. Phoneme segmentation fluency is another subtest. The students take those assessments, they sit down, it's a one-on-one, quick 2-3 minute assessment. That data is then put into a database, and it takes, this is how we did on these subtests, and then it tells us, is a student in need of intervention, or is this student on par or on track to acquire the skills necessary to become a proficient reader. So when you see, for instance, beginning of the year of 17-18 at 64%, that means 64% of our students, as they walked in the door as kindergartners, were on track to be proficient readers. Does that answer your
So
question?
the scores were high enough that they are considered proficient or
Correct.
close to proficiency?
Correct. So that tells us that out of the rest of those students, we need to be keeping an eye on those students. We need to drill down a little bit deeper. And one of the things that was already established when I got there is data meetings through Julie Klein, through Rose Golinsky. They've established data meetings with grade level teams of teachers that are taking deeper data dives and looking at that and saying, so what is it for that 30-some% of students that they're struggling with, and how can we intervene, whether it be through tier 1, the classroom instruction, or tier 2, intervention instruction as well.
Okay, so I see it did go up then 80% mid-year, or 30 way, middle of the year.
Correct. Correct.
I think.
I see we have a lot of school mobility, almost 20%, 18% of the students are moving in and out of this.
It's a bit of an eye-opener, isn't it? Yes. So again, that's students that have disenrolled or enrolled after the first day of school, and yeah, so you're talking about about almost 20% of your kids.
So I'm sure that affects do they move like all over the place, or from one school to another here in Exeter?
Both. You find both. You find families that are moving within the community, and students who are coming from other school districts.
That can be challenging also, especially when they come 3 quarters into the school year.
How about it? Kids are resilient. They're amazing, though.
Just a general question. I'm looking at our trends now over 3 years, specifically in the mathematics area, and this is really not your area, Mr. Freeze, just because you haven't been here long enough. And I know that we instituted our new program for mathematics probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I'm looking at, we had this really nice blip, for lack of another term. It really came up, then we sank this year. It tends to be that for all of both 3rd and 4th grade, 4th grade maybe not as much, maybe they're still having some benefits that came with that. I wonder, are there any concerns that maybe the program had this initial push and now it's losing some of its energy, or do you think it just happens to be these particular students may not be grasping the concepts as easily, or where do we think we are here?
From again, my perspective, my answer to that would be, rather than looking at the specific program, I would want to look at mathematics in general. One of the biggest areas, coming from another elementary school in my past life, one of the biggest struggles we have is identifying programs for intervention for math. So we're really good at finding specific interventions for ELA, for reading. So students struggling with basic phonemic awareness or decoding, we know what intervention we're going to put that child in. And one of the things that we struggle with is, for math, finding valid interventions, mathematic interventions, that do just that, target specific student areas of need. And that's sort of from a small group standpoint, I guess, or an individual standpoint. But from a whole group standpoint, I'm very much looking forward to working with Dr. Winters and Mrs. Belinsky, Rose Belinsky, in terms of going into classrooms and seeing what's happening. We've been in classrooms, obviously, but to go in together and take a look at what's happening in classrooms and making sure that we're all working together to make sure that we're implementing the math curriculum the way that it's intended to be implemented across all classrooms.
And just to go a little bit further, we have just completed our pilots on the programs of math that we will have in the classrooms for the instruction that would help to supplement. I believe that answer should be coming to the board in another month or two.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Mr. Freeze, I just want to say thank you for introducing us to the data dashboard. I think it's an excellent concept, and I hope we see some of the other schools start to emulate your product here. I think it does a great job of helping us understand the data that we collect and putting it all in one spot, and I think it's very understandable and clearly presented. Nice job. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
I also want to add, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt all the questions, that I have the unique perspective of my children go to Watton Creek, and you did a great job hiring him. The parents are very pleased. I'm very pleased as a parent, but he comes to the functions. He came before he even started, and the parents had the opportunity to meet him. I was taking pictures at the event, and the kids were just coming up. They just met him, and they were wrapped around his legs, and they were cleaning the floor with him, and he was cleaning the floor with them, and you can see that the kids really love and appreciate him, so I'm thankful for you, so thank you.
The next section of our agenda has to do with public comments, an opportunity for anyone in the audience this evening to make a statement, comments to the board on anything pertaining to items on the agenda or for the benefit of our school district. That'd be great, and just please indicate your name.
How you doing? My name is Dave Urig. I live at 2990 Levan Street. Thank you for the board letting me speak tonight. I'm here, let me give you a little background. I guess around 11 months ago I came in front of the board and asked about the improving the girls softball field. And as of this date, the board has done a hell of a job, excuse my language, of upgrading the softball field. It looks awesome. The only drawback is the girls can't play in it because it isn't done. And they're starting to push back games. And I know the weather has not cooperated, but this project has started in October and is supposed to be done by January 1st. And here we are, third week of March, and the project still hasn't been completed. Now I know when the outfield and the scoreboard were done, the AD, athletic director, was in charge of that, and he got that done quick. So I don't know who's in charge of this project, but I just would ask the board if they could try to get this project completed so the girls can play their softball season. I don't want to be getting anyone in trouble, but it's sitting there and there's still fencing around it and everything else, and they were supposed to have a game tonight. So I'm begging the board to do something about it to get the job complete.
Just because they don't know which areas are not finished yet.
It's the fencing going out from in front of the dugouts. It's safety issues. They can't play in there because foul ball right in the dugout hurt a kid. So the fencing has to go out. Now I understand, I talked to the fencing company today, and they said they've been waiting 2-3 months. They have the fencing, but they haven't given the okay to install the fence. And like I said, I know the weather was bad and everything, but there was windows of opportunity to get the project complete, I think. I mean, I've been in the construction painting industry for 30 years. I know how it goes. So the Boosters Club asked me to come talk to you tonight, so I thought I would come since I did 11, 12 months ago. So we are asking for the board to at least find out what's going on, and because I guess the next home game is in what, 2 weeks?
April 11th.
Because they pushed a bunch of home games back so the field can get complete. I mean, you guys done a hell of a job. That field looks great. We went from one of the worst fields in the Berks County to one of the nicest. So the kids thank you, the girls thank you. Thank you very much. So that's all I ask. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, obviously our goal was to have it completed for the beginning of the season, and appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and I'm sure Dr. Phillips and his staff will address that.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
My name is Jason Spiker. I'm with Dave. I'm at 517 Campus Backcourt. Before I start off with backing him up, I'm going to say I feel it's better to start off with something positive. This past weekend, I took my daughter, who's a junior at the high school, for a college visit. And we met with the director of the department while we were on the college visit. And one of the things that this particular university does is not just judge on SAT scores and GPA, but they also look at the elective classes that each student takes when they're in high school. And my daughter was going over, she's currently in the Principles of Marketing at the high school, is one of her electives. And she was going over some of the electives she's already taken through her junior year, and the director was completely taken back that she had taken some of these classes already in her through from 9th to 11th grade, because she said most schools don't provide those classes. So as a compliment, because I think it will help my daughter actually get in, because this is one of her favorite colleges so far that we visited, my compliments to the school district for offering those kind of particular classes. It was really nice to hear. I personally am thrilled that the district is pushing STEM courses. I'm an environmental scientist by background, an MBA by master's degree, so I'm a really big into the science and math. So that's my first compliment. To follow up with Dave, I'm actually, what happens when you miss a meeting is you get elected to the board. I'm the vice president of the softball boosters. And like Dave said, I completely appreciate everything that's been done to the field and that the board approved it last year. In fact, when Dave told me that what was approved last year, I was completely surprised that it was trying to undertake in 1 year. I thought it was going to be a 3-year process, and I honestly thought that maybe we'd have to fundraise to help pay for it. And we've fundraised to help pay for numerous things for the coaches and for the players already this year and last year that we don't think the school district should have to pay for. But as Dave said, it's a little disappointing that this project hasn't been completed yet. And one of the things that I look at, and I know it's not comparing apples to apples, but on the way here, Shelbourne Road, there's a new house being built. That house was started in January. It's almost done. So whether, in my opinion, and being in project management for over 10 years, can be surmounted. So I just ask that as we go forward, and actually the boosters meeting was tonight, and while there was other people that wanted to come, we didn't want them coming to this meeting, because I don't think it's appropriate to have an adversarial type of environment. We just want to make sure, especially for somebody like Dave's daughter, who's a senior this year, that she gets to play her senior year on the field that you guys helped fund. So that's my only comment, and I thank you for the time.
Were we aware of this issue? Dr. Phillips, were we aware of this issue?
The project has been going through I've not heard anything other than weather.
Okay.
So it's been moving through. I've
Okay.
seen the guys out there every time I've been by.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll speak. I'm the person in charge of the project. I've been in constant contact with the general contractor. The conditions of the field, obviously what's left is the fence installation, and the field's either been frozen solid or it's been a mud pit that they can't go up. There are trucks on the field to install the fence. So yes, there was a January 1st completion date projected, but that has long been passed because we got our first snowstorms in mid-December.
Do you have an updated completion date?
What's that?
Do you have an updated completion
The last
date?
updated completion date I got was March 20th, but
Okay.
we've had 2 snowstorms since I got that March 20th completion date. So
Okay.
that is hampered construction. I've been in contact with Tom McGath, informed him I'm working with the contractor to get a new completion date. The contractor obviously wants to get paid and finish the job, so they're doing what they can to tie up the project. I'm aware of the April 11th deadline. And
Yeah.
we're trying to meet that.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Thanks for your comments, John. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, we're gonna move on. We have two sets of minutes, that are on the agenda for approval. So I move that we approve the board workshop minutes of February 13th and the board voting minutes of February 20th. A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Treasurer's report, Mrs. Patient.
Yes. The Exeter Township School District's financial statements for this period ending on February 2018 is as follows. The year-to-date summary of revenue and expenditures, all funds, statement of assets, liabilities, and fund balances, payroll and fringe benefit summary, investment statements, and student activity and athletic fund. I move the treasurer's report.
With a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 7, school board actions. It's recommended, and I move that the Board of School Directors establish a district transportation ad hoc committee and appoint board members Mr. Brady, Mr. Geloff, and Mr. Chapina to that ad hoc committee. And the committee will provide periodic reports with recommendations to the board and the superintendent until the review is completed.
Just as a clarification note, Dave, because you're the board president, you will be an ex officio member on this committee, correct?
By policy, I'm a member of every committee.
Okay.
That's true.
Can we just make sure that that's written here, that the public is able to see that? Because I saw a couple of things on Facebook talking about, people were confused why there were 3 people who, for different reasons, they didn't mention that you had been on the committee. And I think that it would do us a good service, and anybody who's gonna read the minutes as well, or the agenda, to have that listed out for them, because people aren't familiar with that type of a policy. So that's just a small request, and I think we've done that for other committees as well, where we've written the president as an ex officio member, so I just have a small request with that.
So is everyone in agreement with the recommendation to amend the motion to include my participation on this committee?
Yes.
Will that exceed more than 5 members?
That'll be 4 members. That'll be 4 members.
I agree, but I might request that even though as the chair of the personnel committee, that's why I'm there, I think I might ask to not be part of this committee. I'll be part of it as a member of the board, but I would like to have somebody else who hasn't been involved in the issue for the last 3 years have an opportunity to perhaps bring a fresh perspective. I'm also a little pressed for time, professionally, so I'm struggling to see how I might be able to do the work of that committee as well. So I'd like the board to consider perhaps appointing another person who might bring some fresh ideas as well as have maybe a little bit more time.
Is there anyone on the board who is not assigned to this this ad hoc committee who would like to be a member of the committee?
I think I would like to be a member of the committee.
Okay, so we're going to reformulate this motion. Anybody else have any interest in this committee?
I don't necessarily say I would like to, I'd be willing to, if we needed someone else.
Okay,
But if
well, I
Pat
think,
is
and we
willing-
generally want to limit it to 4.
Yeah, so I'm saying if Pat
So
wants to, clearly, unless the board thinks, back to what Mr. Japina said about potentially just having a new outlook, not having been on the board before and dealing with this issue, it would be very new to me.
And one of the reasons we had selected these 3 board members was Mr. Brady was in charge of facilities, Mr. Geloff was in charge of our business functions, and Mr. Japina personnel. They were committee chairs, so that was the reason for their selection, but, you know, with this modification, we'll add Papeja, and myself will be enumerated. So it's recommended that the Board of Directors establish a Transportation Ad Hoc Committee and appoint members Brady, Geloff, Peja, and Hemberger to the Ad Hoc Committee.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're going to move on to board policy. We have several board policies that are up for second reading. They include policies A through, looks like G, A through G. So we're going to break this up and say, I would recommend and move that the Board of Directors approve policies A through G.
Second.
With motion and discussion, motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when the, reporting student progress, the changes there, so about the reporting, it's saying that the parents then would, use the online, resources to get their information if the student is failing. But it looks like the change is the parents are being notified if their student was failing. I know there's interims, right, mid-quarter and then the report cards, but it's saying now that the parents would have to go online to find that out?
That's a change that we had, that was added by our administrative team and discussed in prior board workshops. And this is second readings, we've had ample discussion on this. You have a concern about that?
No, I just, was thinking about like the parents, I think most parents have access to, the internet or seeing that.
Administration does have good lines of communication. I mean, this is just another aspect of what they can do to get on there and see. I mean, they can go on every day if they want.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if there's no contact through internet, the administration would be aware of that and they would make other arrangements.
Yeah, I think too, as I read through it, I mean, it talks about various methods of reporting. So this is just an additional, option that will be required to be available for parents. But thank you for your comments on that. Any further discussion? This is for second reading, so this is for approval of these policies. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, policies H through O are up for first reading, and I move that the board approve policies H through O.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, specifically I'd like to look at policy 218.1 referring to weapons. Terms shall not include but not limited to any knife, cutting instrument, cutting tool, nunchucks, firearms, shotgun, rifle, replica weapon, or any other tool, instrument, or implement capable of inflicting serious bodily injury. Typically in the past, dealing with things such as the pocket knife, we're not looking at guns, but pocket knives, for example, we've had the child who accidentally comes to school when they forgot that it was in their backpack because they were at grandma's house. I find that the fact that if they are found to have this, they violate this weapon policy, they're going to be expelled for a period not less than 1 year. We typically have hearings on these issues to determine the fate of the student, and I find this to be a very draconian approach to some of these things. I can understand when it comes to guns and things of that nature, but when it comes to the pocket knife, I think that might be the exception that we might want to consider in this particular policy.
Well, I'll just say there's really no way that we can remove that from my understanding, and I'll defer to our attorney here. This is part of school code, this definition, and we're required to follow that portion of under the Safe Schools Act.
But typically, up to this point, including the years I've been on the board, that was one of those items I can honestly say that we had at least 2 or 3 hearings on in the past 8 years, dealing with the grade schooler with the little penknife. I mean, I understand that we have to be careful and we have to be caring and be protected, but I think that sometimes that policies can become so cut and dry, so black and white, that you can't look at why something happens and where it occurred. I mean, as I said, I can understand when we start from the cutting instrument and go on from there, probably no problem. But I think that knife has some kind of definition in there with the blade size or something.
Well, I'd just like to say that if you look through the policy, it gives the superintendent the option to modify any of the disciplinary consequences, oftentimes based upon the age of the student and the conditions that might exist. So there's no absolute penalty for the for having a weapon on school grounds by a student, and that is something that I think is up to the determination of the superintendent in consultation with his administrative team.
And I would say that would be a part of the discipline code as well in the building. So if we were to get that specific, then that would be a very difficult road to go down.
Well, I don't think that's what Mr. Brady was saying. I think he was saying by making it so cut and dry, we're tying our hands. But I think what the policy already has is that even before it would get to the superintendent, the building principal decides whether it's recommended to the superintendent for expulsion. And I raised the same point with Dr. Hemberger and Dr. Phillips as well, because I thought that this was, I thought that this was in direct an adversarial relationship with what the administration is supposed to be doing, because it gives us a firm, you must expel a student if found guilty of this by the board. And I think that personally, I don't think that's right, but it's in state law, so I don't.
Typically, we've always had expulsion hearings. It hasn't been something we're guided by a piece of paper.
Let's go back a second. First of all, there isn't no absolute requirement to expel a student for being in possession of a weapon. It may indicate that at one point that there's an expulsion, but I think that condition is subject to review by and modification by the superintendent. So if you read further in the policy, and I think that's indeed what we do. I mean, obviously, we're not going to expel a kindergartner for bringing a penknife accidentally to school. So those are the conditions under which the superintendent would be involved and modify. However, I think it really is an absolute requirement to report any weapons possession by law. So while it may be a kindergartner, the report has to be made, and local law enforcement has to be notified. And whether the local law enforcement responds is not really the critical part of it. It's that they need to be notified, and then the superintendent would be in a position to make a decision. And to bring it to the school board is, again, the superintendent's prerogative.
I don't disagree with you on what you just said, Dave, but I do want to push back on one area. It says the board shall expel for a period of not less than 1 year any student who violates this policy. And that seems pretty cut and dry to me. And, I raised that in our discussion that we had about a different policy, but that's required by state law.
I see where it says the exception may be made in the policy. I mean, there's direct language in here that says the superintendent may make an exception to any of this. So yeah, and again, I think that wording is probably directly out of school code.
It is. And can I say one other thing too? That it does state in here, but even if it didn't, all students are guaranteed their due process rights anyway. So a hearing must. You can't expel without the hearing anyway, or at least the offer of due process to the student.
Yeah, this is one of these, interesting policies that is embedded with hyperlinks that take you back to the school code and regulations in the Safe Schools Act. So I think we have to be careful about trying to, let's say, manipulate some of the language. But I think the intent is, and our intent as a board, is to give the superintendent full authority and power, and I think it's reflected in this policy, to kind of amend any disciplinary action recommendation based upon judgment of the student's intent and age.
Sure, and I would just echo what Dave said, Dr. Hamburger said. Obviously, I would have a discussion with the principal, but we're not gonna bring a kindergarten to expulsion over a mistake that was just given as an example.
And Jim, I would say too that one of the things that we do relative to expulsions is to offer expulsion waivers to parents. But ultimately, even with an expulsion waiver, that's approved by the school board. So we don't often actually go through the process of conducting an expulsion hearing, which is expensive for the parents, expensive for the school district, and time consuming for all board members to attend.
Well, I've attended a few, and they're not very pleasant.
Yeah, and it's not pleasant for the families either. So oftentimes the waiver of the expulsion hearing is a nice solution, and it resolves the issue, and it imposes a certain disciplinary consequence, period of time of expulsion, without all of the theatrics of a board hearing.
And the three, it goes to 2.5 years now. There was one in my tenure here, so we don't use it as the hammer.
I think I've gotten more confused as this has gone on, because
It was my understanding that the principal has to make a suspension call, and then anything past 10 days is an expulsion call, which the superintendent recommends to the board. But the board must have it unless they get a waiver signed that they will do something else. Is there anything wrong in what I just said?
I'm not quite sure. Past 10 days would not be, a full expulsion would come to the board. A 15-day or even a 45-day suspension based on certain criteria for certain students would not come to the board per se.
Well, I'm not sure if that's true.
yeah,
I mean, I think any amount of time out of school beyond 10 days, beyond 10 consecutive days, constitutes an expulsion from school, even if it's 1 day beyond. So that would require board action as far as I know. Is that correct, Ms. Long?
Yes.
Yeah.
so I guess
In the process, though, it's not something that is I'm using like the 45 days for a student that has weapons, drugs, or, those are
That's a
situations.
special- that's a
Yeah,
special
those are special education. That's something that's not even negotiable.
No, the special, that's a different animal altogether, the special ed context. That's a change in placement of the student more than it's subject to disciplinary action, but it's looked at more of a change in placement than a disciplinary action at that point.
Yeah.
so I guess where I'm confused now is
It sounds like, Dr. Hamburger, that what you're saying is we are trying to empower Dr. Phillips to make a call about what kind of terms of expulsion there would be if somebody violates this provision. Where I'm getting confused is that, to me, it seems very clear that there cannot be any exception unless it's a student with a disability.
No, that's not a correct interpretation.
where are we getting that there's an exception? Because I read through this whole policy and I didn't see this before.
In accordance with state law.
Page 2, paragraph 1 or 2, there's something about the board may make exceptions to that policy if I read it more thoroughly. It's the last paragraph on page 1 that said, at the very last sentence says the superintendent may recommend modifications of such expulsion requirement on a case-by-case basis. I can also assure you that I've been at expulsion hearings where the board, frankly, you set the policy. If you want, you can ignore the policy. I've seen boards ignore the policy, and maybe even ignore the recommendation of superintendents. I've seen boards do that. I'm not saying you should, but it happens. So I don't see this as draconian as it may first appear. It is a state law, but I don't see it as necessarily tying your hands that you have to do this. Remember, this was originally put in by the state to make sure that there was adequate punishment if there was a weapon brought to school.
So maybe I'm missing this part, but in the state law that we refer to with the original punishment, is there something that says that the board may amend the expulsion?
It doesn't say the board, it says the superintendent. What you see here is pretty much a word-for-word recitation of state law. It is what you see here in this policy.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional discussion? Okay, I think we have a motion and a second.
Oh, I have,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
A
go ahead.
different policy.
Different policy.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Dr. Phillips, if he was comfortable with, everything in policy 805, the emergency preparedness. We kind of added that because of.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we follow that already.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'd just like to say it was a good call. I mean, timely, that policy that we had in place was put in place in 2003, so many things have happened, and I think probably some legal language has actually been added and enhances and provides additional protections overall for the board and for the district. So thanks for that recommendation.
Sure, and I will say I read through it and I'm happy with it as long as Dr. Phillips was as well.
Any additional discussion?
Policy 222, just a question, does that also cover vaping?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure I didn't necessarily see it in there.
There's a line in there, other devices or something.
Okay, thank
We
you.
discussed that.
Okay, any further discussions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Business functions, Mr. Gill.
Thank you. First order of business, BCTC 2018-19
General Fund Budget. It's recommended that the Board of School Directors authorize the expenditures of the Berks Career and Technology Center's general program for the period July 1, 2018 to June 30, 2019. The Exeter Township School District's proportionate share of the cost will be $1,126,354. The district share for 2017-18 is $1,291,557, which includes a final 6/18 bond payment. For FY 2018-19, the cost includes tuition payments for regular and special needs students and funds for capital improvement. The district's proportionate share of the BCTC budget for regular education students is 7.855% based on a 3-year enrollment advantage, or average rather, of 119 students. Prior year student average was 123. Special needs proportionate share is 11.957% based on current enrollment, 11 students last year.
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
fair market value purchase option for Chromebooks. It is recommended that the
Board
board
of School Directors authorize district administration to exercise the fair market value purchase option in the amount of $19,170 for 424 top seller N21 Chromebooks. The FMV purchase option was included in a Lenovo lease agreement dated May 19, 2015, which was a 3-year operating lease for 1,160 Chromebooks.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion?
Yes, I have a question regarding this. Now, we're going to be purchasing a number of the Chromebooks that we've had under lease for 3 years from what I'm seeing here. What's the life expectancy of a Chromebook, and how will we then be able to dispose of them properly after this?
Well, when we started the initiative of the one-to-one, the research that technology did kind of indicated that 3 years was a good term to rent them for. Moving forward, the durability of the Chromebooks, they're looking at going to a 4-year term now, and they'll continue on. This will get the 11th grade students 1 more year on their Chromebooks, and then it'll be a 4-year cycle going forward to rent them. And they will continue to be operating leases, rentals, and then they go back to the who we have the lease through, the return.
But we are purchasing the
Right.
424 we're
Right,
making
so
a
you're
year.
asking what are we going to do?
A year from now. Where do these go?
Well, they will determine, the technology staff, those that they can have as part of inventory, that are good enough. And we'll dispose, as we dispose of other things, through a certified recycling company.
Thank you.
I just caught a small difference here. From the last meeting, I thought this was like $21,000, and I think that there's a change to about 19,000, roughly. Is there any accounting for that change?
I asked Lenovo if they could do any better on the price, and they brought the number down.
Awesome.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? The motion carries.
Fiber optic network agreement. It's recommended that the Board of School Directors authorize district admin to execute a renewal of a fiber optic network agreement with Service Electric Communications for 3 years at a cost of $1,200 per month. Service Electric shall lease and maintain fiber optic cable connections between SEC's head end and Exeter Township School District buildings.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Donation of a drum kit. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors accept a donation from Mr. Adam Smy Rumsby, Exeter Township resident, of a Roland TV3 electronic drum kit for use by the Senior High School Music Department. Drum kit is of professional grade, 10 years old, and valued between $400 and $700.
The motion and second. Any discussion?
I'm shocked that we have to vote on this.
The policy indicates the board has to accept donations.
You can't just say yeah.
Ryan, you can.
But it's like the next thing, disposal of equipment. Just throw it out.
Okay.
Is that a standing motion that you want to give for that?
Yes.
Denied. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Solicitor attendance, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
That we could send a thank you note to the gentleman that donated that.
Solicitor attendance at board meetings. It's recommended that effective April 2018, the Board of School Directors will require the district solicitor's attendance at voting meetings only on an as-needed basis.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
As discussed previously, I'm going to be voting against this motion. I don't think this is the correct way we should be voting.
Any other discussion? I wasn't, and I have to apologize, I was not at the workshop meeting when this was discussed, but I do have some thoughts about it. If you can bear with me, I'll share my thoughts about it. And first of all, also, Hunter, thank you for filling in for me in my absence. Very well done. When we look at attorneys' presence at voting meetings, one of the things that first comes to my mind are costs, and I think when we look at costs, and obviously I don't say this with any in any way to demean or diminish the contribution that you provide here, but the average cost of $750 to $900 per meeting, depending upon the length of the meeting, is a significant financial cost. And I think as stewards of the community, it's up to us to be financially proactive and prioritize our spending to reflect what would be services that might be more available, costs that might be more appropriately dedicated to students. It's also my understanding, I was in a group of people who were interviewing the attorneys, and it was my understanding that several firms in our interview process indicated most districts in the region do not require the attendance of their solicitor at every voting meeting. Also, it's pretty evident to me that the time spent in by our solicitor at the meetings is generally not as productive as it could be. There's not a whole lot of evidence to date to suggest that having legal representation at voting meetings has resulted in averting a legal problem. And in fact, there is no guarantee to avert a legal problem, even if our solicitor would be in attendance at every meeting. I think the third reason I think about this is that this is actually recommended by our legal counsel. They understand when they're involvement is necessary, and they don't see the necessity of being at every voting meeting. Primary value of the service really is what happens before the meeting and between the meetings. It's that legal consultation between our attorney, our solicitor, and our administrative team, our central office staff, our superintendent, our HR director, our business manager, who rely frequently upon legal counsel to make those daily decisions in the course of their work. And the other thing too is I think that when we consider what happens prior to the meeting, the solicitor reviews every agenda, is familiar with every item on the agenda, and is often involved in constructing those items on the agenda, such as the policies that we talk about or the contracts that we determine to vote on. So I really believe that if we saw something in a workshop meeting that had some legal implications, and we felt that we wanted to request the attorney to be there, they will absolutely be here, and they worked at our request, and at our pleasure. So just my thoughts that I think this is from my perspective, it's a both fiscally and practically prudent recommendation, and I am in support of it. Any further discussion?
Amen, Dr. Hamburger.
I would just note that it is permissible to abstain on a vote if you have a legal concern and nobody's able to answer the question for you. So the board members should know that when you have to provide a reason for abstention, not having access to somebody on a question that you might have where you can't get counsel when you're voting, that is a valid reason to abstain.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
So just to clarify, this would be on an as needed basis, so like in case you said, well, we're not clear, we would just delay the vote, or like how would this work with as needed? Hopefully it came up in a vote in a workshop meeting and we would get the counsel then?
Yeah, I think if we had a workshop meeting and we felt that there was sufficient reason to request the presence of the solicitor because there were, let's say, legally contentious issues. First of all, we would obviously be speaking to the solicitor in between the meetings, between the workshop meeting and the board meeting, and to kind of clarify, what the legal parameters are. But having the board solicitor there at a voting meeting, if it's deemed necessary, they come as requested. So, but if not necessarily, and I think we've all experienced this, and we all know this, that I would say 98% of the time we're not making use of the person's time. It's downtime, and it's very expensive downtime. And the real use of the solicitor is that time between meetings where they're working with our administrative team, and that's really important. And these are typically, I'd say, 15, 20-minute phone calls on a fairly regular basis to clarify decisions that are being made from a legal perspective. Very, very important, critical role. I don't personally, as I said, I don't see nearly the value of sitting through a meeting and just to be present.
So have we ever broken down our legal costs for public meetings versus other consultation? I'd be curious to see what percentage of our costs is meeting-based versus other.
I know, you provided some information, just generally in terms of what our expenses to date are, I think, but I don't know what that reflects in terms of total costs. I'm sure our consultation costs are higher than the actual board presence, the costs associated with being at board meetings.
Because at $700 a pop, take $1,000 a pop, it would be what, $24,000 a year. I think our legal costs are significantly higher than that.
They fluctuate year to year. I mean, our budget is around $65,000 that's not including special education. And depending on what's going on in the district, it could be higher or they could be lower. But in this situation, being charged on an hourly basis versus it's more, we're paying more than we've ever paid for prior solicitor to attend, just because of the arrangement and what is really current among firms on services. And the trend is not attending every meeting.
There's a decision the board made, we made a decision. It's not the cost associated with legal counsel is not the attorney's fault, it's a board decision that we made as part of the process that we went through.
So, back to Dr. McClendon's kind of clarifying what she said and also getting some more clarification.
It said as needed, I wasn't clear on that decision. Who makes that decision then on when are they needed or not? Would that be, like Dr. McClendon asked, would that be during a workshop meeting? As a board, we would say, yeah, let's invite the solicitor after our voting meeting? Or would that be Dr. Phillips and you, Dr. Hamburger?
Yeah, I think it could be, and you're right, we really haven't talked about who would do that, but logically it would be the superintendent and maybe consultation with myself. And if we deem that there's sufficient substance in the agenda that would suggest the need for council's presence, we would do that. Or if we run into a situation at a workshop meeting where we really believe that there's a contentious issue, I mean, obviously that's a request to be made. Oftentimes, we also need a solicitor for legal matters in executive session. So in a case like that, it would probably be one of those situations where the solicitor would probably stay for the board meeting as well. It would make sense. I think it's important for a solicitor to be there at least sometimes throughout the year to understand the culture of the district too, to understand the culture of the board. And so it's not a prohibition by any means, but it's a recognition that the bulk of the work and the more important aspect of their role is the day-to-day assistance they provide to our administrative team, and not necessarily what they provide to the board. Any further discussion? Okay.
Call the question.
Call vote. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Just have a hand vote of those who are opposed to this measure, so no. Okay, two opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Young.
Disposal of equipment. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the disposal of the following equipment to Ludwig Timpani Instruments in poor condition. Asset will be sold for scrap.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yes. How old are the instruments? And do we need to purchase replacements, or have they already been purchased?
We weren't able to identify a purchase date, so I don't know the age. They're very, like I said, poor condition. We recently did, in the past 2 or 3 years, purchase it. So they just want to get them out of the area, out of the storage.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Budget transfers. It's recommended that the Board of School Directors approves budget transfers for the month of February 2018 in the amount of $56,686.
Any discussion?
This is another one of those things, like when we approved the snow days being used, that we voted on it afterwards. Is it contradictory that we're approving something that's already done?
Well, sometimes we do that, we refer to it as ratification, not an approval, but I don't know. Yeah.
Well, as far as budget transfers go, the law is that if it's a transfer within its own function or department, it can take place, the actual transfer and you're changing the appropriation. Okay, when somebody needs to buy something, it's within their functional area. That can take place before the board approves it. Now, if you're transferring from different functions, that has board approval first. This lists both together. So behind the scenes, if someone within a department needs funds from another function, well, they have to wait until this action is taken before we can move the money for them in order to do a purchase order. They would have to wait for the month or whatever.
So we are not literally saying it's okay that you spent this money.
No, we are following what the law is in
Okay.
terms of transfers,
Right.
changing appropriations.
Any further discussion?
Hmm.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Personnel Committee, Mr. Chapina.
Resignation. It is recommended the Board of School Directors approves and ratifies the following resignation: support staff, extracurricular staff, certificated substitutes, and support substitutes.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a
Sure.
question. Both of the senior high head swimming coaches for both the boys and the girls are resigning in the same month. It's the end of the season? Okay, so there's no other reason that, okay. Is there no other reason? Do we know?
You're a charity athletic.
I know, I'll have to ask Mr. Legatt.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following appointments, and I'll start off with administrative staff. Christine M. Whalen, Human Resources Director, effective March 21st.
27.
Oh,
Yeah, she has it here, it's changed on the online version. She
Okay.
forgot to charge it.
all right. 2018, contingent upon terms and conditions specified in a properly executed mutual agreement.
Second.
Any discussion?
After you vote,
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Ms. Whalen, you wanna stand up and say something?
Thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited. I just want to say thank you all, and I look forward to sitting down and speaking with you all individually, and I have a lot of ideas. I'm very excited to get started tomorrow. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow early.
Put that personnel committee meeting on your calendar too. It is recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following appointments: certificated staff, support staff, and guest teachers.
Second.
Request, separate guest teachers from the.
Okay, we have a request to separate guest teachers from the vote. Any objections? Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It's recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following appointments: guest teachers, Norman W. Rades, BS Accounting, Dante Santoni Jr., BS Accounting. Somehow those initials do go together.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Are guest teachers paid?
Yes.
It's the fact that they're not certificated is the difference.
They're trained by the IU, but they don't have a teaching certificate.
Okay.
That's my understanding. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Thank you.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following leaves of absence: certificated staff and support staff.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following requests for change of status: support staff,
Give a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
it is recommended the Board of School Directors approves the attached list of course requests.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Now I'm gonna read each one of these. No, I'm kidding. Thanks. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the staff conferences below.
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're gonna move on to student functions. Mrs. Stratton.
Below it is reported the following field trips that are being reported within a 60-mile radius that have been approved. There's 21 of them. And it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the below field trips beyond a 60-mile radius. There is 5 of those.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the request of Brandon Willoughby, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, doctoral candidate at Immaculata University, to work with our athletic director as she conducts research as part of her dissertation.
Get a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the 2018-2019 Soaring Eagle Program of Studies catalog for the junior high school students and staff.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is also recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the 2018-2019 Soaring Eagle Program of Studies catalog for the senior high school students and staff.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves a tuition agreement between the MCIU's Anderson School and Exeter Township School District for the MCIU to provide shared services for the listed student from March 2018 through the end of 2017-18 school year at a cost of approximately $22,000, which is just under $11,000 for each student.
Second.
Any discussion? I have a question. Is this the first time we've accessed this program?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It's a program that the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit had opened a couple years ago, the Anderson School, and it works with students with emotional support needs.
Oh, what kind of support?
Emotional
Emotional support.
support.
Okay. Is there some reason we're using them as opposed to some of the other places where we could consolidate transportation and send
Well,
kids?
actually, we did consolidate transportation. With that place, we had 3 placements within a short period of time of students, and they're all in the same run. We're using 3 new schools right now, the Lincoln School and the Anderson School, that are about 5 blocks apart from each other, and then another school down in Chester County's program down in Phoenixville. So the kids are all in that same run, so we consolidated that run for the 2 students. One of the issues we really run into in Berks County is that we do not have a lot of emotional support programs that have accompanying intensive mental health supports in the programs themselves, the psychiatrists and psychologists and that kind of stuff. So,
Thanks, Dr. Miller. Any further discussions?
I had a question. When you had said that you're combining up to possibly 3 students on one bus ride, and they're emotional support students, is there an aide on that bus? Just out of curiosity.
we always evaluate whether an aide is needed to support the students, and there was no need for an aide on that bus.
Any further discussion?
Is the $11,000 for the remainder of the year, or is it $11,000 a month?
I believe it's for the remainder of the year.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves a tuition agreement between New Story, Perkiomen Avenue, formerly Kenhurst, and Exeter Township School District for special education services for the listed student beginning March 23rd, 2018 through the end of the 2017-18 school year at a cost of $16,744, which is $299 per day.
We have a motion and a second. Any question, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We have one no. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Stroud. Okay, we'll move into committee reports. Athletic Committee, Mr. Aaron's.
Plenty of good things to report. I have a couple here. I'll get to those in a moment, but in other news, we'll probably, the athletic and extracurricular committee with the association will probably be meeting fairly soon, and we'll have some reports to report back to the board on recommendations that committee makes. So for student achievement, Brooke Bollinger competed in the PIAA state. One thing, can we clap for all of them at the end and not for each one? Because it throws me off a lot. Brooke Bollinger competed in the PIAA state swim meet last week and ended up 16th in the 100-meter breaststroke. Alexis Schwank qualified and competed in the bowling championships in Pittsburgh this weekend. She finished second in the Eastern Regional Tournament to qualify for Pittsburgh. Denny Karras finished sixth, which he medaled in for the PIAA State Wrestling Championships, not last weekend, but I guess that would be 2 weekends ago now. Spring Sports' first official contest was last Friday, March 23rd. And now
Not throwing you off, is it?
say it again.
Thanks, Mr. Aaron's. Curriculum Committee, Mrs. Hacker.
At our last meeting, we reviewed with the principals that were present, both the Soaring Eagles, the junior high and the high school, that we just voted on this evening. It was a very nice meeting, and our next meeting is April 10th at 6 p.m. before the workshop meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just have a quick request. Could, for the agenda for the curriculum committee, could we add a discussion about having the Stop the Bleed program incorporated into either the health or the gym classes for students? Just a discussion, not a recommendation, but a discussion to see where that might lead, because we do similar programs to that. And I think that it's really cool that it's originated from here, and I'd really like to see us run with it.
I'll direct that question to Dr. Winters.
We can get that on an agenda at some point between now and the end of the year. I can't promise it will be equal.
All right, as long as it's for next school year, that's great. Turn it off.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Mrs. Hacker. Mr. Brady, Facilities Committee.
Okay, first item we'll have is we're going to recommend the Board of School Directors authorizes district administration to advertise for bids for the Exeter Township School District's projects, capital improvement projects, multiple school facilities, as indicated in the attachment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It came up today at Lorraine. Some of the recommendations, such as, and maybe we can pick Mr. Brady's brain on this one. One of the recommendations was fobs for the buildings, for some of the doors. Is that in the list, do you remember? Because they were very concerned about it.
We are having a secure entry path to the office developed, and we're looking on other security things. And you'll be interested to know, our next facilities committee meeting will be on April 23rd. Thank you for the lead-in, where we will investigate other interesting things that are needed in Lorraine. But we'll get back to that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We're going to have a forward down line. Recommending the Board of School Directors authorize district administration to advertise bids for 2 split system modular chillers, 200 ton. The equipment is for the Jackson, Wald, and Lorraine chiller plant and piping work. Due to manufacturer lead time, the equipment purchase is being bid as a separate purchase outside of the capital improvement multiple school facility project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
When it says due to manufacturing lead time, can you elaborate on that for me?
Very easy. These things take a long time to, we want to make sure that we are not held up in the process of that other bidding document to get this moving ahead. This is a project we would like to have happen as soon as possible, as we've had a system that we've been pretty much limping along for the last several years. We've had people in mud and deep in water during the summertime trying to patch it together, so we're trying to be proactive.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It is recommended the Board of School Directors accepts the proposal from Dolphin Datacom for a district-wide LED lighting replacement project at a total cost of $815,079. Project cost is per CoStar's 2008 through 2017 contract. Or 008-017 contract, sorry about that.
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion?
Mr. Brady, can you
Yes.
give us some of the figures? I mean, I know we discussed it, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Some of the figures on how we're saving money here.
I think it's a good idea, Jerry, because not a lot of people might not have the benefit of sitting through that facilities meeting, and it should be on the record why we're doing what we're doing.
Precisely.
Unfortunately,
Or maybe doing what we're
unfortunately, inside the information I have with me this evening is not here. However, it's possible Ann may be able to attain that for you. I don't know the things we, but you happen to have it with you. Thank you so much. When evaluating a project of this type, we're typically looking for a return on investment ROI and how long it's going to take us to get into a cash positive situation. Our longest payback on this system is typically, as explained by Dolphin Electric in their evaluation, was 5.9 years on a system that is anticipated to last 20 years when installed. The project will include all 7 buildings. We're looking at the administration building, Lorraine Elementary, the junior and senior high schools, Reichton School, Jacksonville Elementary, and Owatta Creek. I was semi-surprised that Owatta Creek was included because of the fact that the building is so young. However, the lighting system that was installed at that time was not LED because LED was not the standard, even though that building was a LEED certified building. So one of the things we're really looking at is how can we get our money back? One of the big questions we had originally was this project was anticipated to be in excess of $1 million, if I remember correctly, 1.2 plus 1.9. So we're seeing roughly a $1.1 million savings or less cost than we originally anticipated. One of the big advantages that Dolphin came up with was instead of ripping out our existing lighting throughout all our buildings, they could retrofit our systems, which could reduce our costs drastically and save us. And also would possibly make your project a lot easier to do. They're going to move through this project in a method that does not disturb our classrooms. For example, they may tackle the administration building first, they'll go to the school buildings at nighttime to go through the project. So that give you enough information here, Jerry? Thank you for providing the paper for me this evening.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2 other items.
Yep.
First is, well, the first item is that we're going to have our Lorraine meeting, which will be our next facilities meeting. As I previously mentioned, will be April 23rd at 6:30 p.m. There will be 3 items up for discussion that evening. First will be, we'll take a walk around Lorraine, looking for various items that may not have made the list of improvements, but things we note along our route. Second thing we're going to look and talk about is RER Energy. RER Energy is a local solar company that was recently in, there was a publication, there's published information about the Berks County Reading Eagle. And also it's a local company that is able to generate income in a cash positive sense. So they're going to come give us a presentation and allow us to learn more about what they do and how they do it. And our facilities are good candidates for what their operations are all about. The third thing we're going to talk about is the one-room schoolhouse. For those of you who may not have been on board with the decisions for the one-room schoolhouse, when the improvements were made at the Shelbourne Road 562 intersection, the one-room schoolhouse at that time was relocated away from the intersection. when it was moved back, there were investigations into what needed to be done for the building. We've had some community members who are very interested in the building and maintaining it and making sure it stays alive for the use of our students, as it is basically history that's alive and it's in our neighborhood. There have been questions about the maintenance of the building. Right now, there's questions about access in the basement, also moisture and things of that nature. So we want to have at least a conversation about what we're doing to maintain this asset so it's there for our children going forward. So that's what we'll be talking about on our April 23rd meeting at 6:30 p.m. at Lorraine Elementary, where we start our meeting off in the library. Thank you.
Provided the weather's not icky.
The weather will not be icky. We're going to be inside.
Thanks, Mr. Brady. Personnel Committee, Mr. Japina.
I don't have really, well, actually, I do have two things. One, Christine's still here. She bolted already, man. Last meeting, she'll be able to bolt from, so. Go while you can go. I know, Bob, that we talked, the Personnel Committee minutes. Are they posted to the website somewhere? I don't know. I know that I got an email back from Donna, but I don't know if they went out to the rest of the board.
Yeah, she had mentioned that she had posted them under the wrong heading, but she was supposed to send them out.
Yeah, I just wanna, cause I saw Jerry's email this morning about, who does minutes or who's posted to what committee. The minutes, we did them a while ago, and thanks to Pat for helping edit them for clarity. So they're available if you haven't gotten the minutes from the last Personnel Committee meeting. I don't know if we're gonna push them out regularly or if we're just gonna post them somewhere on the website, but wherever, I just wanna make sure that, that they're out there. And then there are a host of personnel things, but I really need, now that Christine's here, I think we can start moving forward on some of these. So that's it.
Thanks, Mr. Japina. Policy Committee, just want to indicate that the committee members met informally with the administration recently to continue discussions on the homeschool policy related to the possibility of including homeschool students in a part of the academic school day in Exeter, and that continues to be a discussion that we'll pursue. We're looking for additional feedback from Dr. Winters and Mr. Kane, who have both conferred with some other district representatives, and we're going to follow through with that, those conversations. But generally, this policy is one of those things that, if modified, might allow and might give every administration, school administration, the option to consider homeschool students' participation for a portion of the day, as specified in the policy, under very kind of strict conditions. We'll keep the board updated in terms of how that policy continues. Technology Committee, Mrs. Page.
Yes, security camera system overhaul at the senior high has taken longer than intended, but it has been completed, and the building and admins are happy with the product. This was simply a replacement phase where the servers, the software, and the old cameras were replaced. Future plans for the building includes adding additional cameras. E-rate for the year 2018-19 will be completed with the approval of the contract with Service Electric continuing to be our fiber optic metropolitan area network, which is going to be the acronym MAN, between our facilities for 5 years. Additional E-rate projects for 2018-19 include expansion of wireless networks and cabling. The replacement of our oldest wireless access points is complete. We have transitioned from current access points and have added a large room access points to several of our rooms where large students and staff groups work. Brighton 5th grade students will begin to take their Chromebooks home at the end of the month following parent information workshops. And Exeter Step STEM Night will be held at Brighton on Thursday, April 26th. I assume it'll start at 6 p.m. So last year, you know, they had a great night, and lots of community members came, and I would suggest if you know, have small children, you can bring them along, because there's a lot for everybody to see. For up to 8th grade, I believe is it like 1st grade to 8th grade, I think the kids are involved. You'd be very surprised at the great work that they're doing.
Kindergarten?
Yes, kindergarten.
I took my kids last year. He wasn't even in kindergarten.
Not only that, but we are also going to have the pre-K counts program is coming out. They're going to be located in the gym area, and they're going to be having books to give out to the students. They're going to have make-it-take-it crafts. So it's going to be a neat kind of community event throughout the whole building.
Yeah.
And the BCIU thing is the 25th, right? That changed. That
24th.
24th. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the convention.
There's a lot that week, and the 23rd facilities. Yeah.
We should know what you'll be doing every night.
You'll be with us.
Thanks, Mrs. Page. Is that the end of your report? End of your report? Okay. Exeter Community Education Foundation, Mrs. Hackman.
Thanks to my good friend Amy Lutz, who is also present today. I have a quick report from the board. We did have a board meeting last Wednesday. Feels like it was forever ago. And here's what I have to report. ECEF voted in a new vice president, Jason Schaefer. Jason is a 1998 Exeter graduate and an employee of Riverview Bank. Jason has been a longstanding member of ECEF. ECEF, a founding partner in the TIPS program, has donated $8,500 to the TIPS 2018 summer program. The board is pleased to embark. I was like, maybe that's a word I don't know. It's possible. Embark this donation, or is it earmark? It is earmark. I don't know that word. I'm an English teacher. It's been a long day.
Not an Exeter.
Not an Exeter. Earmark this donation. I'm going to look that one up. To aid the students and the families of Exeter Township School District. ECEF has agreed to be the pass-through for net proceeds of May Days. While details are still being worked out, ECEF hopes these proceeds will help our schools as it had in previous May Days. Working with and through the Exeter's administrative staff, ECEF identified 2 grants through the Berks County Community Foundation. These grants, if awarded, could amount to $73,100 in relation to the LED conversion for Exeter Township School District. We hope to identify and cultivate further grant opportunities for the district. Finally, ECEF is happy to see the great press that the medical detectives and Daryl Shooker at the junior high school have been receiving through the district newsletter and the Reading Eagle. ECEF helped fund the start of this program, and as a group, we're happy to see the impact it's having on our junior high students. Sorry for messing some of that up. Amy could have done a much better job, especially this late. But that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Hackman. And thanks, Amy, for being here and for all that you do for the district. I know you're very hardworking.
I do want to give a shout out to the district newsletter. I think it is really robust, and there's a lot more in it. It seems to be more thorough and more detailed, and I think it's very well done.
And the credit would go, Mary Ann Gibney worked really hard on that, as well as everyone in the district kind of collaborated on it, so it's been a team effort. BCTC Joint Operating Committee, Dr. McClendon.
Okay, so we met February 28th. I emailed a copy of the briefs to everyone, but I think that going forward it probably is better if I guess on and put it here, right in the agenda. So that's, right?
Either way would be fine.
Okay. All right, so that's like some of the main points of the meeting. But there was a presentation by the principal from the East Campus, and I was really, I wanted to give some recognition for something that he mentioned, which is Nina Owens, transition coordinator, and Erica Moyer, an elementary special ed teacher, took a group of students, the life skills elementary students there. They spent the day in cosmetology, painting your nails, and all those kinds of things. And then they went to culinary, and paid for their own lunch, you know, went up to the register. I thought that that was just really wonderful that they would have the children there, and I talked to Dr. Miller about it, because I think this is gonna be some
They're gonna do it ongoing. They're giving, Nina and Erica Moyer, they had this wonderful idea to take the kids up to the technical school, and it gives them some life experiences, but in a more controlled environment. So like going to get your nails done and stuff like that. So they don't have to be maybe in the beginning something like that in the public. They can be in the tech school and then going over to the cafeteria, the restaurant, buy their lunch and have those environments before maybe when they get a little older and they're in junior high and they do go out to do some recreational experiences like that. They're going to go over, I think the next time they're going to go, I think they're going to try to do 2 visits a year. The next time we'll maybe visit the dental clinic and just kind of get more oriented and not be as nervous as maybe most of us are about going to the dentist, and just kind of help the kids get used to that. And then it also exposes the kids to possible options out there, you know, depending on their abilities. So it was a great idea. The kids had a great fun.
It was really wonderful, and they showed us slides, pictures, but I wasn't sure like about showing it at a meeting. But the children were really having a wonderful time. The principal, he had his hand up and showed us he had 5 different colors on his nails, and he said he, you know, had to go to a meeting afterwards with these multicolored polished nails. But I thought that was just great, and I'm glad that they're doing. I think that's the only school that was
it's probably the only school district who's kind of doing that.
Yeah. So
We're still trendsetters.
yeah. So okay, they also gave us status on the house. They had some slides of that as well. They have the 2nd floor on, and I asked because I was wondering, like, do all the students get to work on that? And since the house takes 3 years, and the programs at the BCTC are 3 years, you all get rotated eventually in to do, you know, whatever their program is, electrical or whatever. And they said that I think when the roof gets on, the 2nd story's on, and when the roof gets on, we'll be able to take a tour. And speaking of tours, I think we're going to be scheduled to have our board meeting there in the fall. You did that, Dr. Phillips.
Well, the board has actually not approved that, so we're not going to do it.
Okay, but that's
My understanding was the board did not approve that move because we were outside our district and it wouldn't be fair to the taxpayers.
Well, I just think it was an
No.
objection by one person.
Yeah,
There was one
no.
person that had issues, the rest of us were okay.
But I don't believe we ever had a vote.
There was no vote, or no, or a vote at all.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so my understanding, last thing I heard was we had objections and then we had no vote. So
Well, my objection was more that we would be replacing our regular meeting with that meeting. I have no issue going out there and holding a public meeting.
Is this something that should be coming to the board for a vote, are you saying, or?
Well, any direction from the board, if we're gonna do it, there was no direction.
Yeah, there are a couple ways I think we could do this. I mean, we could go out there as part of and use it as part of our board meeting, or we could go out there independently. One of the things we talked about, actually, I guess yesterday morning we had a conversation, we were talking about a little bit, you know, the idea of maybe just going out there for the dinner as a board, for the tour, and including some of our administrative staff to come with us to also go out there, just as and do that just in itself and not try to combine that with a board meeting on a separate night.
So previously, is that how it was done, like a board meet?
Previously, we had a meeting out there afterwards.
That's what I'm asking, like previously, did we do our board meeting there?
Yes.
So is that something we should be putting on the agenda and taking a vote on?
I think if we want to make a decision to do that, we probably should.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, if we feel that it's important to kind of make that decision now, fine. If not, we can make it next month. Does anybody have any burning?
Sure, I mean, I just need direction that I can have my administrative assistant reach out to them and get us some dates.
Right, they had mentioned, well, yes, this is before maybe you talked to them, they mentioned that we were gonna be coming there in the fall, so that was probably before they talked to you about it.
Well, I talked to Dr. Kraft and we had been talking about setting up a time. But then again, we were never given specific direction from the board. So I believe all the dates are tied up for the spring, so it would have to be next fall.
Right, that's what you said.
But when Dr. Hamburger and I discussed was something that would hopefully satisfy everyone, where you would not take a board meeting and move out there. It would be another night that would be kind of a retreat type event where we would have the board some administration. We would have a dinner out there. We would have a tour of the building. That type of an
It would be
event.
it would be a shorter evening, and, you know, I think having a board meeting and doing all the other things like touring the facility and having a meal. I don't know how that went last time, Jim, when you guys did that before, whether you felt that was onerous, was okay?
So can we?
I don't have an issue with it.
And have a vote on that, you know?
I mean, when do we need to make the decision?
Well, you said all the dates are tied up, so it would have to, you know, so.
What are we saying here? Do we want to have a board meeting out there? Or do we want to have this retreat type meeting? Whatever you guys want is just, I just need to know how my secretary tried to.
I don't have an issue with a meeting. Anybody
Somebody
else?
I don't have an issue with the meeting.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion that we sort of amend our board meeting calendar to include a meeting out there to be arranged by the superintendent?
I'm
Okay,
going
Jim.
to make a motion that we can have one of our workshop meetings in the fall at the Berks County Career and Technology Center, and that way our actual voting meeting will still be held in Exeter, but we will do our workshop typical processes out there after our dinner that we have and our tour of the facility.
Second.
And this would be in the fall.
Yes.
I'd like to propose an amendment that we have a meeting, but not replacing a workshop meeting or a voting meeting for any month.
What's the purpose of the meeting?
You just gotta get a second.
Yeah, okay, so we have well, we kind of addressed the amendment first, and so the question really is, do we have someone who wants to second the amendment to Mr. Brady's motion?
Parents.
I second.
Oh, you did second?
You seconded.
I second.
No,
his.
second.
Okay, but we're waiting, somebody needs to second
That
Mr.
was
Hunter.
Hunter did the amendment.
Mr. Aarons.
Oh.
Hunter did the amendment, not
Yeah.
Mr. Brady.
He's got the motion, he has the amendment, so someone has to second his amendment.
And what's your amendment?
My amendment is that this would not replace one of our regularly scheduled meetings, basically.
I think we're failing to get a second on that.
My only comment is that if this is replacing one of our regular scheduled meetings that happens in the district, I don't think it's good constituent servicing, and I'll be voting against it.
I think if we advertise this ahead of time and let individuals know where it's going to be, just as many people who attend now might be at that meeting. I don't think it's that much of an inconvenience to be able to travel to Ole, because people who live inside of the Exeter Township region actually probably live further away from our building here than this building is to the Ole Valley.
This will be the only ECTC.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
No.
One opposed, motion carries. Okay, very good.
I will make sure that gets taken care of tomorrow.
Dr. McClendon, anything else?
No, that's it, and we actually have a meeting tomorrow, so
Okay.
the next meeting is tomorrow, so.
And you'll
I'm
report
not
on
in
that next
favor
week.
of extra meetings, so.
Yeah, thank you. BCIU Intermediate Board, Intermediate Unit Board. The big news there is that on March 15th, Dr. Joe Hackman, who most of you know is the Executive Director of Berks County IU, was approved for a 4-year term, which will be effective in July 1st, 2018. That's all for my report. Legislative Liaison, Mr. Geloff.
I have nothing, sir.
Township Liaison, Borough Liaison, Mr. Chapina.
So I have a couple of things. I was not able to get together with Lisa Vanderline from Exeter because I just couldn't get together. I don't want to violate HIPAA. And
I think you just did.
But we'll get back together. I did have a breakfast with Bob May from St. Lawrenceboro. It was the first time I had met him, so just sort of reaching out. I will say that in that conversation with him, they are aware that the district is putting together a transportation committee to review what potential options there are, and he made a suggestion, as I've gotten actually from several different people through email, that if the board committee would consider some involvement from other stakeholders in the community as part of the process. So that's an ad hoc committee. Well, you'll have to make your rules for that, but they were just looking to see if there was, other people with other perspectives as part of the top end of the funnel, gathering this information so that you can hear other perspectives.
Mr. May is,
He's the president of the St. Lawrence Borough Council.
Okay.
Mike, may I for 1 second?
Sure.
I heard some of the exact thing you're talking about, people wanting to be involved. And I thought that when we originally set this up, the idea was to get an initial meeting set and then bring anything else forward. Am I correct?
I think we need to get organized first.
Right.
Yeah, internally.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say that we want to be involved eventually.
No, I think that what I've heard is they know that they can't be part of the decision-making body because they're not, they don't have to vote on whatever we move forward on, but they certainly were looking to have input into the process. My suggestion to them was that the committee was only just beginning to form and that they actually haven't created a process yet, but that I would advance, and I know some of you folks have heard this from other people as well, or have seen some of the stuff on social media, just, asking for more community involvement in at least the early parts or the public parts of the process as we consider what our options are. Because it's not just looking at the bus facility, it's just taking a step back and looking at our overall commitment to transportation.
It's a great suggestion.
Yeah, that wasn't mine, but I've got
It's a great suggestion.
I've gotten several emails from people, and you ask people what they think, and they'll tell you, and you find out that there's some really smart people with really good ideas in the community who are also very passionate, not necessarily about one way or the other, but just about, thinking about the whole, scope of issues, and just anytime somebody wants to be engaged in something we do, it's like, really?
Oh, yeah.
Let's invite them in.
Absolutely.
It doesn't happen often.
I just want to echo Mr. Gittina's comments too and say that I think the best way that we get good results is when we ask first. And we know that there are plenty of people, and we can probably identify them sitting around this table now. We won't, but we can say who those people probably are. So I think it would be a good idea to make the invitation first before we expect that they would come to any meeting that we set.
Any other comments? Is that the extent of your report? Thanks, Mr. Gittina. Payment requests, Mrs. Paja.
Yes, I have payment requests of $3,530,892.40 from the general fund. And I just want to let you know that of that $3,500,000 plus, $2,454,910.42 went to Pacers. Now my question, Ann, is that our final payment for Pacers this year?
Yeah, that's a quarterly payment, we pay quarterly.
Okay, so do we have to do it at the end of the year till another?
$10 million a year.
Is it 3 quarters done?
Every quarter.
So we're 3 quarters done.
4 times a year.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I would request that you approve these payments.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in
$10
favor?
million a year?
Yes, welcome to what we've been voting on.
Well, we
now,
get
it's
5
right
million
here.
back. We get 50% from the state. Right?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Phillips, Superintendent's
All
report.
right, thank you, Dr. Hamburger. First, I'd like to just point out, if you would look on the screen, we've got some additions to our website. We have up on top, we have our tagline, Exeter Expect Excellence. And then if you look down below, that is our vision that will appear all the time on our homepage. Inspiring and preparing today's learners for tomorrow's opportunities. So we're still trying to work on getting that a little bit tighter. I wanted to make the board aware of an exciting event that happened today. We were selected by Google to participate in the AR Augmented Reality Pilot Program. They did beta testing. Google sent 2 sets of equipment for 2 of our teachers, Steve Deibler and Jess Dunbar at Rifton, to use with their classes throughout the day. Jess used her to augment her forces of nature simulation with her science unit, and Steve used the Da Vinci's invention simulation that fits with his Create curriculum. And I wanted to show you a quick, these aren't our kids, but this is a short little video of what goes on with these kids during this event.
All right, who wants to see a volcano? 3, 2, 1. Look at that lava, look at that smoke coming out of that. Pretend you're an airplane and fly over the tornado.
At the top of it.
What do you see? These are asteroids, meteorites.
We're learning about DNA and genes, things that we can't see. And so the most exciting thing for me with the AR technology was that I could see kids get an aha moment that I couldn't get by just telling them about it.
The minute I saw it pop up on the screen, it made me want to get up and walk to it.
We actually get to turn around and look at things from all angles, so it gave us a nice perspective.
See if you can figure out what that might be based on what you know about the respiratory system.
I got to see where the alveoli branched off, and I could look inside them and see how everything worked, which I never saw before, and it was really, really cool.
Now again, these weren't our kids, but our kids had the same reaction. It was quite impressive to see the actual, and I know Dr. Winters was there as well, to see the actual, they were term cell phones that were hooked up to I guess that's one of those extension sticks, and they're selfie stick, and they were using it over URLs, and I went into the eye of the hurricane. It was tremendously exciting, and it really helped with the lessons. Again, some of the great things happening in our district with our students: the Berks Career and Technical Center Students of the Quarter, the West Campus, Kylie Yost was recognized for graphic imaging technology. The East Campus, Cameron Heath for Auto Technology 1, Tanner Schaefer for Computer Systems Networking and Security, and Victoria Bartley, Protective Services, and Jasmine Collin Cruz for Service Occupations. The Exeter Senior High Science Olympiad team competed in the Central Eastern Science Olympiad at Kutztown University. The team qualified for the PA State Olympiad by placing 5th in a field of 28 teams. The following students placed: Nick Ciabatoni and Sid Marapahu, first place in Mission Possible; Sophie Scaboria and Adesh Radhawa, second place in Astronomy; and Nick Ciabatoni and Evan Damachi in second place in Towers. The team now begins its preparation for the PA State Olympiad Saturday, April 28th. This is a request, or a statement, I guess, from Melissa Crotty thanking the board for allowing the 8th grade chorus and 8th grade orchestra to participate in the celebration of music in our school month held at the Capitol. On the beautiful marble steps, the choir performed 5 pieces, including music by Scott Joplin. As a transition piece, the choir and orchestra performed Amazing Grace together. Afterwards, the orchestra also played 5 pieces highlighting the talents of Exeter Junior High. During the performance, Representative David Maloney and Miss Pennsylvania visited with the groups. Sorry, I missed that one. Congratulations to the following students on their awards at the BCIU Countywide Art Show at the GOG Awards. Amy Schmale won scored a 75.00 for second place in the crafts category. Cassie Sears first place in hand-built pottery. Amy Schmale first place in open media category. Maya Sims honorable mention in oil and acrylic category. Lauren Posey third place in water media category. Lauren Posey second place in color drawing category. Ariana Shachuko honorable mention black and white photography. Alexa Wozniak honorable mention design category. Ray Sturz, first place Award of Merit, and Andrea Kex, third place Oil and Acrylic. Finally, on Wednesday, February 22nd, we greeted over 100 of our incoming kindergarten parents from the class of 2031. This was the first year we were able to provide childcare due to the money allocated from our pre-K to 3 grants money. Over 40 children enjoyed making crafts, reading books, and creating a special treat while parents learned about their child's upcoming year in kindergarten. With our move to central registration for incoming kindergarten students, we are pleased to share that we had over 3 times the number of parents attend this forum than those held in the past years. That's my report. Thank you, Dr. Ember.
Thanks, Dr. Phillips. This time I'll accept the motion for adjournment.
So I just want to help.
Sorry.
It's Muparaju,
I'm sorry, I killed those names.
Shabatoni, and Donaghy.
Yes,
I think
Ms.
you're going to have Muparaju and Shabatoni. I think we're both freshmen, so you're probably going to have them for the next 3 years.
I can do the
So-
pronunciation, yes, thank you.
Mrs. Hack.
I did see it on the agenda this week, and I know Dr. McClendon had mentioned it last week, but both assistant and superintendent had already gone. But when are we going to revisit the 2018-2019 calendar? We had discussed that to revisit, and we haven't had it yet.
Well, we've already looked at it, and we'll be getting a new draft out to the board this week.
Okay, wonderful.
Mr. Aaron's.
I just wanted to raise something to everybody's attention. Right now, there are exchange students here from Mosberg, Germany. I don't know how many there are. I think there are about 16, I believe. But we will also be sending Exeter students out to Germany in the summer. And I just want to say that that program was huge. I hosted a student while I was in high school, and if you have the opportunity to meet any of those kids, you'd be surprised to find how bright they are. So I definitely encourage the administration to take that opportunity and maybe sit down and talk with them, because they're some really amazing people. And it really opens up our students' eyes to the world around.
They also had their teachers last year when we sat down with them, so you get to meet all culture.
Can I just suggest one more thing, Bob? That Exeter expects excellence, and the tagline that you have on the website are great, and you should use Kylie Yost, the graphic designer, to blow them up on the homepage of the school district, because
Actually, we have a contest going on right now. Mr. White is facilitating it, and the students are actually working right now to see who can come up with the best graphic artist. And then they will certainly be on the website, but also be recognized here.
thank you.
Yep.
Any additional comments? Motion for adjournment?
So moved again.
Motion? Second? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.